morning, dear people of the internet, and welcome to the digitalization of crochet. I also thought that crochet was like a physical thing that you make with your hands and then you have a physical object at the end of your project. But apparently crochet can be done digitally now, powered by AI, of course. I feel like these are just traps on the internet, and I feel like a lot of people are still falling into these traps. So I thought it would be a good idea to go through all of the AI crochet related things that I've seen over the past few months and talk about them and see how we can avoid them, because I think they need to be avoided. Before we get into all of that, I have a very short public service announcement. I have this very delusional plan of this channel helping me through college and beyond, and luckily you can help me with that for free by subscribing and watching my videos when you like them, so thank you for that. Now let's get started. The first place I saw AI in crochet is in crochet patterns. I took this screenshot from Etsy and I just looked up crochet patterns, and you can see that the first two listings are AI generated crochet patterns. First of all, they have the yellow filter that you see a lot in AI generated images. And second of all, zoomed in, these pictures look nothing like crochet. I don't know what they look like. They are very fake. You could argue that they are just bad pictures, but that would be bad marketing, and nobody who has one physical item would make such bad pictures for promoting their thing. That makes no sense. So AI it is. They're also really tiny, that makes them fake, but it's not bad. It is AI. I think the reason this actually gets sold is the amount of patterns, over 7,000, for the low price of €2. That is fantastic. It's so fantastic that my imagination could never. It's so fantastic that it is impossible. To make a crochet pattern, you first need to make the thing. Then you need to write down all the steps you did while making the thing. You need to make pictures while making the thing. Then you need to compile all of that in a legible document. Then you need to get it tested. Then you need to update the pattern with the feedback you got from the testers. Then you need to make product pictures from the finished product so you can promote it. And then you need to upload it to a website like Etsy. If you disregard the testing phase, in which you could technically write a new pattern, this is still gonna take a lot of time. I think it's generous to say that you could make maybe 1 or 2 patterns a week. Nobody does that, by the way, but technically you could if it is your full-time job. And then it would still take years to get to 7,000. Like, that's an entire lifetime. Say that you're able to make 100 patterns in a year. It would take 7 years before you get to 7,000. That is technically possible, but I refuse to believe that there is an 85-year-old grandma somewhere who started making 100 patterns a year since she was 15 and then finally uploaded all of them to Etsy right now in the age of AI, so you can have a pattern book of 7,000 patterns. That makes no sense. That did not happen. Another possibility is that this could be a bundle of patterns by a lot of different makers. But only the seller is credited, and it costs $2.10, and Etsy has a lot of fees and taxes exist, so if you subtract all of that, you're left with like half. And then you need to divide that over all the makers that made those 7,000 patterns, which is going to be a lot of people, so that's also not happening, obviously. And they are also not credited, so that's very unlikely. Technically, it's a bundle of different makers because AI scrapes the internet and learns from the free patterns and maybe also paid patterns out there on the internet, but people are not credited, and it's compiled by stealing, basically. It's just easy to conclude that this is barbaric in any case, even if it was the 85-year-old grandma making 100 patterns a year since she was 15 years old, which is quite literally almost impossible. You would be thinking, but that's incredibly obvious. Who would be buying this, and why would anyone think it's even a good idea to make this targeted to an audience of crafting people who are generally very against AI? Doesn't make sense at all. The crochet community still has this image of being for old grandmas who want to make amigurumi for their grandchildren, for example, and they are maybe not so tech savvy that they can see that this is AI, so they buy the thing because 7,000 patterns for €2 sounds like a great deal. I think that's the image going on. It can also just be that people like cheap things and don't think for themselves, or that there are people out there that think that AI crochet patterns are okay, even though they obviously are not. And this product has 170 reviews, so there are people who buy this. I would say that 7,000 patterns, regardless of the price, but especially for this price is too good to be true. And I would also generally say that staying away from things that seem too good to be true is good advice most of the times, or maybe even all of the times. I think this was a really obvious example, but AI generated images are getting better and better, sadly. It has gotten to the point that it was necessary for the people in the subreddit Crochet Help to make a topic for people asking whether a pattern is AI or not. Because this baby poncho, for example, has clearly defined stitches and does not have such an obvious yellow filter as the previous thing I showed you. It just looks kind of off, and I had to take a second look to see why it kind of looks off. But the way the butterfly sits in the poncho is quite literally impossible, but it would be possible if you do it a little differently. Someone in the comments also said that the color changes look kind of weird and impossible. It could be that they used variegated yarn, but then the color changes are just really lucky, and that generally also doesn't really happen. I think a good rule of thumb here is that if you have to ask if something is AI, it probably is, but sometimes also it's not, because I've seen a post recently of something that people were asking if it's AI because they didn't know if it was possible or not, and I don't think it is, but it was an entire discussion with no true outcome as far as I know. But I think it's a rule of thumb to believe that something is AI if you have to ask most of the times. But it's just really sad that it's getting harder and harder to distinguish, because we don't want AI images in the crochet community. Like, the handmade part of it is the entire thing. It is the most special thing to hold something that you make yourself, or to see something that someone else made themselves and designed themselves, and it's art, and we don't need this. It's not necessary. There's already enough crochet out there, and I would love it if it became more, but not by AI, just by actual humans. This doesn't just happen with digitally sold patterns, it also happens a lot with crochet kits you might find in craft stores or dollar stores. This cow pattern, for example, does not make this cow. I don't know what it would make, but not this cow. And to make that even easier to prove, no crocheter with more than an hour of experience would write the following sentence: final step, pull through the cotton thread to tighten and cut it. If you do this, your project will fall apart. You need to leave like a piece of the end that you cut off and then weave it into your work so the knot doesn't come undone. Otherwise, it definitely will be. We have all been stubborn in the crochet community and actually done this, and then a week later we regret our choices because it's unraveling. So don't do that, and nobody who has any experience with patterns would write this. If you want to make amigurumi or anything, you're better off looking for real designers on the internet. There are plenty of ways to find them, and just buying the patterns from them. And there are also plenty of free patterns for amigurumi and anything out there that you can just download for free and then make. It's wonderful. I also have a free tutorial for a small mushroom plushie, by the way, on my channel. I will link it somewhere in a corner. So there are plenty of AI free options here, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to get to them. Moving on from patterns, some people seem to think that it's okay to use AI to promote their crochet related business ventures. Not too long ago, the yarn brand Hobby, for example, thought that it would be okay to use AI to make product pictures, for example. Even though that's sad, it was not entirely unexpected, because Hobby had apparently been bought by private equity or people who just want to make a lot of money above anything else. But it's even more sad when small businesses do this. For example, indie wool dyer Hoyt Knit Yarns announced their advent calendar of this year with this questionable picture. The blurry quality of the image is weird, and no graphic designer would use different typefaces in one sentence like this. This image looks too detailed for a beginner artist to make this, and a professional artist would be aware of the concept of contrast, for example, so they didn't make this either. And the fact that this fish has two butts and no head is also a pretty clear sign. As an artist, I understand that hiring artists is very expensive. Every other day I'm surprised by how long it takes me to make something. So I get that, but free stock photos and the free version of Canva exist, or Affinity Publisher if you're looking for more functions. I threw this together in Canva with a free stock image and free fonts and all that kind of stuff, and I think it looks better. I think black Times New Roman on a white background would have looked better. The Times New Roman thing comes with the additional bonus of pissing off the White House for some reason because they think it's gay. It has nothing to do with this, but I just think it's funny, so I thought I would tell you. Happy Pride Month. I know this comes out on the last day of Pride Month, but still happy Pride Month. Anyway, I've seen way too many of these kinds of promotions over the last year, and it feels like they're just testing what they can get away with. Using AI generated images might seem quick and easy, and I do understand that time becomes more and more valuable in this economical climate. But it's just not worth it. And luckily those people don't often really get away with it, because out of the 3 comments under this picture, all of them were mad at the AI use in this image. And Hobby got so much backlash for their using AI statement that they had to make a response to that. And it's very hard to get Hobby to actually react to backlash, as we have seen last year when their advent calendar was very bad. So it says something that they did actually say something about this, even though what they said was kind of weird, but we're not getting into that. The backlash works. They're not getting away with it, and I think that's important. The best way to avoid this is by not buying from people who do this, sadly, but it works. And also by just saying something about it. Don't engage in a positive way. And I rarely say this, and I'm not saying that you should go to the post that I just showed you and tell them it's shit because they used AI, because people already did that, and you should not harass people. However, saying, hey, you're using AI on this because of this, and I don't think that's great in this community, or in any community, but in this community because artists, blah blah. I think that is good if you see it out in the wild. Not if you're coming off of a video and just going back to harass people. That's bad. Also, just be sure that it is AI, because I've also seen a lot of artists being harassed, getting told that they used AI while they didn't, and there are no actual clear signs of them doing that. So that's also weird and should not happen. The last place you can find AI in crochet is in finished pieces. That doesn't mean that there's a 3D printer out there running on AI mass producing crocheted flowers you find on Temu, even though I would not be surprised, but I don't think that's actually happening. There are so many people online showing off their crochet and what they make and how they make it in short YouTube videos or on TikTok, for example. And that's great. I also do that. I love to see other people doing it. It's wonderful. But AI also does that now.
My daughter's bag's ugly. Could you please give her some support?
It would give you an instant hernia if you drew like this. And why is there a photo of the finished product on the drawing page of a bag you're currently designing? Like, you should not have this picture yet. And nobody's drawings look like that, because that is impossible unless you're doing it digitally, which this person allegedly is not. So this is just weird. And also, any of the markings on the page don't make any sense if you're designing a bag. In this next clip, we see the person crocheting or repeatedly stabbing a crochet hook in the project she's working on, which would get you nowhere except for damaged yarn land. And who on earth keeps their yarn in their kitchen? That should be a crime, because there's too much wet goop going on in any kitchen multiple times a day. You should not keep yarn in an environment like that. Furthermore, she's not using the rainbow yarn in the foreground of the video, but it's there for some reason that doesn't make sense either, except for cluttering your workspace. And nobody in their right minds cakes balls like that. And if you do one or like all of them, and there's no yarn brand selling the same yarn in cake and ball form. It's just weird, and it does not make any sense. This is a completely different person. I cannot imagine crocheting without your glasses on and then filming the product review with your glasses on. It's the same person as the first clip, but not as the previous clip. And I'm also pretty confused about what is going on with the back strap here. It doesn't work like that. Why is there a hole there and not on the other side? If you have pockets on the sides of the bags, you don't make them like that. And also, if you did, you would make them on both sides. Here's yet another person twirling around an almost invisible crochet hook in a finished bag. Crocheting does not work like that. She's holding a white yarn in her hand that does not lead anywhere that we can see, and there's a purple ball of yarn somewhere in a position where you would think she's actively using it, but there's nothing coming out. And also, this purple is not in the bag, so weird choice. And there are more yarn baskets in the background. I've never seen anybody keeping their yarn in yarn baskets like that, because they're too small, and also they're not safe for the environment around you, and it just is not efficient in a way, so it doesn't make sense.
Please don't.
Then she cries for some reason, and then we see the finished bags. She's crying presumably because her business doesn't work well, I guess. I was curious to see what these bags cost, so I tried going to the website, which was hard, but I eventually found it. And there are 2 bags listed on the website, and they only have 4 and 5-star reviews. This one costs $39.99. This specific bag, that is supposed to look the same as the first one, but then in a different color, is lacking any flowers, but it's a flower bag. I don't know what this crochet stitch is supposed to be. I don't know why the crochet hooks are glued to the wall, or this yarn basket is glued to the wall, and why this crochet hook apparently has a tumor or something. Also, what is this picture? I can answer that. It's pretty creepy, but it doesn't look like actual something. It looks like vaguely persons, and one of them is a clown with black owl spots around their eyes or something. Again, very creepy. The other bag costs $29.99, and it's basically pasted into the same pictures as the other bag. This one has reviews of the bag with actual images of this bag that are similar as the ones in the pictures, so I found that quite suspicious. Especially since these are way too cheap for actually crocheted bags, because it takes hours and hours and hours, and again with added fees and whatever, you are coming out at least €100. I would say even more. So I went to Temu and typed in crochet flower bag in the search bar. Guess what? The first 2 results were these exact same bags. Now I thought that my hunch was going to be a good one, but I did not think it was going to be this good that it's actually the first 2 search results. Anyhow, this is obviously a bad scam with the AI pity marketing. The crying is also weird because no crocheter in their right mind would think that they can live off selling 2 different bags. That's not how that works. And this is by far not the only account like this, but the other ones are often far more insidious because they are inserting disabled children in them being the crocheter of the business. Now, I'm not showing you these because I am against putting out children on the internet when it's not necessary, like right now, but it's just weird. I think this idea of my child has a failing crochet business and makes me so sad that I'm crying on the internet idea makes no sense at all. A good way to avoid this is therefore also just using your common sense. Like, it makes no sense. Your child does not have to have a successful business, especially when they're 6 or 12 or whatever, and you would not be crying on the internet about that. You can be like, hey, my child makes these, although I'm against children having businesses, but that's a whole other thing. They look cool, check them out here. That would make some level of sense, but not the crying. If something feels like it exists outside the bounds of logic, it probably exists there, and not within the bounds of logic and earth and actually handmade items in this scenario. It's really sad to see that people are pushing AI into a community that is very obviously not waiting on that, and all we can do against it is ignoring it and calling people out if they are trying to do something and trying to test the waters if they can do something, but like not positively engage with it. Don't buy the items of a person doing this, especially if they don't have the power to self-reflect and better themselves and see the reasons why it's bad to use AI, especially in a community full of artists. Generative AI. Thank you for watching. If you like my little video, please press the wonderful shiny like and subscribe buttons, and then I will see you next time. Ciao!